Hi and welcome to Magic Numbers. This is episode number 77, and today I'm going to be talking all about the battles. But of course, before we move on to that, this podcast does not make itself for nothing. So I would like to thank my sponsors, first and prime mtgazone.com, who are sponsoring me and who are giving me a good home for my merry ramblings as I write articles for them. So please go and do some clicking on my articles, read them. A couple of them are really relevant if you want to get some solid knowledge for Arena in general. There is one really good one on wheeling and how to estimate how often cards wheel. It's a pretty good one, so you can find it there. Apart from that, it's also brought to you, and already a couple of people in the chat that I can see are patrons of me. So you can go on my Patreon and support me if you have some extra cash burning in your pocket. And there's some actually benefits coming with that. So we're going to see the weekly question. That's one of those episodes. That's one of those benefits. And there are a couple of others. I think I'm going to expand them pretty soon because I started a new thing that I'm doing. I did one episode, and it's basically me analyzing my games on 17 lands replay and just going through what I did wrong. So usually I pick, well, the idea is to pick one game that I lost because of mistakes and one game that I won because of something that I found interesting, and then discuss that. But I think that in the future I'm going to also be taking from some patrons their logs from 17 lands and going on through their games if they feel like submitting one. So if you're up for something like that, be my guest. I'm going to add those things in a couple of days to my Patreon benefits. Okay, and with that we can move to my standard preamble. And this week it's first information rarely gets updated, and this is a thing that I noticed already several times, that people, even if they are invested players, they acquire some information and after that they stick to that information. It never gets updated. So for very often people will think that the best color combination in the format was the first deck that was predominant in the format, and it's very rarely the case that it's happening so throughout the whole format. So for example, in this format, if you would ask 10 random people on the street and ask them what is the best color combination in March of the Machine draft, 10 of them would say what. But if you would ask 10 Magic players what is the best color combination in March of the Machine draft, most of the people would say blue-black, because that was the most dominant deck for the first week, maybe first 2 weeks. But it's not the case anymore. So this is an updated version of the win rate rankings. This is only looking at the last 2 weeks. And the best archetype for now, at least in terms of the win rate, is blue-white. Then blue-black is at 57%, slightly lower. So blue-white is at 58%. And then you have a whole bunch of decks that are quite close to each other. I would say close enough not to see a big difference between them. They are all between 55.4 and 53.6, so less than 2 percentage points win rate difference between them. And it's like Simic, Selesnya, which is fourth. It was really low in the first weeks, but now it clawed its way back to being the fourth most winning archetype. Arguably, the differences are so small that you can't really put too much strength on it, because it's just 0.1% higher than Golgari. And then you have Boros at 54.6, Izzet at 54.5. Then you have a maybe slight drop. Gruul and Rakdos are 53.9, 53.6. And then Orzhov is way in the back at 51.9. Don't worry, Chronic 33 in the chat. If Orzhov works for you, then it works for you. I mean, just play it or share your secrets with us, because clearly people did not manage to figure out how to make Orzhov work, moi included. But this is the slight change that we had from the first couple of weeks. Blue-black is still a good deck. And hopefully at the end of this seminar, you will see that it's a very, very, very different deck from blue-white, and they should be played very differently, even though they share a color, which is quite interesting and quite exciting for me when I figure that one out. Okay, that brings us to the patron question of the week. We're continuing with Marius and his questions about conspiracy theories related to arena drafts. And he asks, do chase rares pop out in drafts less frequently? Because that's one of the conspiracy theories, that WotC seeds the packs so that the good constructed rares are not being opened in them. So I don't have a clear answer for that, because for different people, different cards are chase rares, but these are the least seen rares when you open a pack. I analyzed, I don't know, several tens of thousands of packs, only looking at the first pick, so you can see the whole booster. And the least seen rare was Bloated Processor at 244. And that was an outlier. There's always like one card that is a slight outlier, just combination of bad luck on opening the Bloated Processor. I mean, you can argue that you can see some cards that are constructed playable. Atali is among those 15 least seen rares at 282. I guess Invasion of Gobakan is a card that can be played, then that's at 285. But you don't see anything that really strikes you in the eye and you see, wow, these cards are busted. I mean, Baral and Karizev is one of the least seen rares. I don't think it's going to see constructed play. Kogla and Nidaro, same thing. And then you can go to the most seen rares. And there, Omnath Locus of all is the most open one. This is another outlier. It's 20 instances more than the next Nahiri's Warcrafting, which is a playable card in constructed Nahiri's Warcrafting, and it's 334. What other cards do we have there? Actually, is there anything that is very playable and constructed in this format? I guess Knight Errant of Eos at some stage may be a playable card. Polukranos may be playable at some stage when they will remove all the value piles with a bunch of removal. But you don't also see in that they are particularly weaker than the cards that were least seen. So I think looking at the data, it does suggest that there is absolutely no method in what rares are opened more and which ones are opened less. That's the general conclusions that I had from that. So hopefully that answers Marius's question, and yeah, we can move to the actual topic of the presentation. So, what does the data say about battles? And the data I used, I took 300,000 most recent games from best of one, and in total, it had around 500,000 instances of battles being in decks. Quite a large sample size where you can start drawing some maybe general conclusions and maybe even go into some kind of detailed conclusions. Right. So let's look at the base games played win rate of the battles. I divided them. I'm going to show all in this particular graph just to show you how close they are to each other in terms of the win rates. But the best battle in terms of games played win rate is Battle of New Phyrexia, 58.3%. It's in the best archetype and actually has the win rate close to the average win rate of that archetype. So it's nothing like super exceptional when you look at the win rate of that card. So the decks that contain it are not some kind of a busted deck, busted card that is way above what it should be. Then you have the Battle of the Invasion of Amonkhet. I shortened them. I just wrote the number of the name of the play because they are all starting with Invasion of, which actually made my data analysis much easier because they were next to each other, so I could easily find them all without going around the spreadsheet and copying them where I should. And then we have the Invasion of Segovia, 56.6, Innistrad 56.2. Segovia is the one that makes 2 Krakens. Innistrad is the one that gives -13 to something, and it has flash. Ixalan, that's the 2-mana one when you can look at the top 5 cards and find a land or a creature. Xerex or Xerex? Xerex. 56%, that's the one that bounces, and on the backside it has the flyer that has power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. Fiora, the Wrath one, that's in number 7. Then you have the Invasion of Eldraine, the Mind Rot with some bonuses. Gobakan, that's the 2-mana one that basically makes Elite Spellbinder, and when it flips, it puts counters on everything that attacked. Mercadia, the Tormenting Voice. Ikoria, the tutor for a creature, and Asgul, the target player sacrifices a creature and loses 1 life and flips into a 2/1 menace that grows when something dies in your turn. And then you have like a bunch of them that just go flat level. So this is number 13 to number 24, and they differ by 1.5 percentage points in terms of the win rate. You have like Tarkir, Rin, Pyrulia, Tolvada, Ravnica, Zendikar, Dominaria, Peladon, Karsus, Ogrotha, Theros, Regatha. And there is basically no difference between those. But of course, you have to keep in mind that the games played win rate is putting a lot of weight on the actual deck power rather than on the card power. So for example, if I see Invasion of Tarkir here, it's a red card. Red decks are losing slightly less. Therefore, it having 54% is actually telling to me that it's not a bad card. While the same thing for Invasion of... No blue ones here? Oh, shame. Same thing on a blue one would be actually telling me that it's actually poor. And then we have the bottom ones. And, Muraganda, Kaladesh, and Lorwyn are still in the same kind of pool as the other ones. But Invasions of Moak, Ergamon, Chandalar, Alara, Kaldheim, Kylem, Nukapena, Kamigawa especially, and Arcavius particularly, these do have much lower win rates. So they are approaching like 50% games played win rate. So they are in decks that are below average for 17 lands. Possibly because they shouldn't be played. And that might be one of the conclusions of the whole seminar. But before we go there, we also can look at the play rate of them, so how often they are played. Obviously, the uncommon ones are going to be played the most, and I'm only going to show you the uncommon ones because they are actually the most relevant for the draft, because you will see them so much more frequently, especially in this set when uncommons are actually something like 20% more frequently seen. Thank you, Bailey, for your very, very valuable contribution. Bailey, come here. I think the cat is tormenting my dog through the cat flap. Lovely stuff. But when you look at it, Amonkhet is head and shoulders above anything else. It's been played 52,000 times in the data set that I analyzed, and the second Invasion of Eldraine 30,000. So that's like a good 20,000 more played. So that's 60% more than Eldraine. And then you have Mercadia and Zendikar, also roughly 30,000. Ulgrotha 27,000. And then you drop to Lorwyn 23. Vryn. Bailey, come here. Quality content only here. Come here. Yes. Yes, the cat is making you angry. Oh no, poor you. Or maybe squirrels on the outside. Anyway, Lorwyn, Vryn, and Xerex 23, 21,000, and then you drop to below 20,000 with Pyrulia, Asgul, Regatha, and Muraganda at 16,000. So, they are played differentially. I mean, Amonkhet is definitely played the most of all of them, but that doesn't tell us much. However, it can tell you something when you combine it with the later thing. Oh, there is the cat. There is the cat. I have too many animals. So here we have the game in hand win rates of those cards. And here we see New Phyrexia being very... Hey! Scotch, quality content, as I said. Fighting animals under the table that you can't even see. Baby! They're not going to make me finish that stream, are they? Baby, sit. Sit. Good boy. Yes. Right. So we can look at the game in hand win rate of those cards. Here, the Invasion of New Phyrexia, you can see that it's actually improving by quite a lot on the gameplay's win rate. So it means that you draw it, you're going to win more. If you remember, it had 58% win rate when you just had it in the deck. But when you draw it, it goes up to 63. So it means it's actually a card that actively makes your deck better, and by quite a lot. My God. It's absolutely impossible today with the animals. Amonkhet 61.6, so also an increase on the regular 57% win rate when it's in the deck. So this actively also improves your deck. Innistrad and Fiora around 60%. With Fiora, that's a big increase. So that can be said that Fiora is played in the decks that don't do very well if they don't draw Invasion of Fiora. If you watch the Pro Tour, you could see that Reed Duke's games when he drew the Invasion of Fiora in his draft were much, much easier for him to win than the ones where he didn't draw it. Then you have Ixalan, Tarkir, Segovia, Asgol, Tolvada, Gobakan, Ikoria, and Eldraine. But if you go down to Eldraine, you already see that this one only has 56% game and hand win rate. Ikoria and Gobakan, 56.4% win rate. Tolvada, 56.8% win rate. Asgol, 57. These are not like super impressive numbers, especially when you think that all the battles are on higher rarity. So lowest you can get is uncommon, and a bunch of them are mythic. And actually, do you even see any mythic one? No, New Phyrexia is, of course, mythic, but oh yeah, Tarkir, 58.8. That's a mythic. 58.8 is not like an impressive thing win rate for a mythic rare. Segovia also a rare 58%. It's like not very impressive at all. Good one, Trezio. Yes, my animals are also having their battle, the battle of the kitchen. And here are the lowest ones in terms of game and hand win rate. Theros, Lorwyn, Belenon, Morganda, Ergamon, New Capenna, Kaldheim, Moak, Chandalar, Kamigawa, Kylem, and Arcavius. And I think that from this list, they are all between 52 and 46% win rate in game and hand win rate. From these ones, Lorwyn is a particularly interesting one to see because people are playing it a lot. Guilty as charged myself. Belenon, I think, is still overplayed, although that's dropping down. People learn that white battle is not a good idea. I think Muraganda is also played quite a lot. I see it on the other side. I don't play it myself anymore. Ergamon also, I was really high on that one in the previous season and turned out to be a dud. And Kamigawa, yeah, that's the one that is played way too much because it's in blue. People know that blue is good. They still maybe not everyone got a message that blue is good, but Battle of Kamigawa is not. Ravnica falls between those, so somewhere in between. Unfortunately, due to my shenanigans with the data and everything crashing and restarting, I can't go to the Excel sheet to see the results. Luckily, I prepared the slides in advance. And obviously, Arcavius is the worst one by a lot. That card is a big trap, it seems. That's people still fall into. So here I plotted. I plotted only the uncommon battles, but I plotted how many times is the card played versus the win rate, and it actually explains that people identified good battles quite well because if you remember my every week, it seems, description of R squared. It just shows you how well does it fit to the line. And basically, the better it fits, the closer it is to 1. It's at 0.65, so it means like this curve explains like 2/3 of the variation. So it's pretty well. It explains pretty well what we can see there. You can still see that some of the battles are maybe underplayed when they are under this line, so like this one and this one, and some maybe are overplayed, like this one and this one and these ones. And obviously, it doesn't say on the graph which one is which. It doesn't. That's the whole point. Because the next slide, I can tell you the most underdrafted and most overplayed and underplayed battles in the format. So here are the 4 most overplayed according to this metric when you look at the win rate and games played. I skipped Battle of Invasion of Amonkhet because, it's overplayed for a very good reason. It wins quite a lot, so I guess it's an exception to that rule. But the ones that are not having such a great win rate and are still being played, now I'm having my own invasion of the cat invading me. So first big offender is Invasion of Kamigawa. Problem with that card is that 4 mana for tapping something is just for 2 turns even is just not on rate. It should be costing 2 mana for that kind of effect. So paying 2 extra mana is quite a lot. Cat, stop invading me, please. And then the backside is also not spectacular. So I think it would be better if the backside would be actually something useful. But like a 2/3 flyer, yes, it draws a card on connection, but that's just not enough, I think. It just makes for a mediocre card that maybe offers promise of something great, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna flip it, then I'm gonna draw a bunch of cards. The reality is that you play it, if you flip it, you still end up with a mediocre creature that still needs to connect, which is not an easy feat in the format with a lot of removal, a lot of interaction spells, and a bunch of flyers on top of everything. And a bunch of reach creature with sneaky reach as well tagged onto it. Then Invasion of Lorwyn. This is played because it's a removal spell, and everyone knows removal is good in this format, but maybe not removal for 6 mana. And then it flips into the possibly most possible type of creatures in this format, which means a big dumb beast that doesn't do anything on ETB, doesn't have any kind of activated abilities, it's just a vanilla. So basically like a worse version of Yargle and Multani. And that's again, that's not something. Also, it has 5 defense, which makes it hard to flip. So this combined makes for a card that sometimes you will have to play when you don't have enough interaction and you want to have some removal. But probably you shouldn't go out of your way of putting it in your deck. I think that in the beginning of this format, I was like, oh well, this is like a must include in my decks, and now I'm more like, do I really want to pick it? Maybe that Ichor Drinker is looking way more attractive to me. And that's actually where I am right now, that I'd rather pick an Ichor Drinker than Invasion of Lorwyn, especially that it puts me on the 2-color deck, not in the best 2 colors either. So I'd rather not pick it. Invasion of Zendikar. This one is overplayed because this looks very appealing, and it's pretty powerful in some games. But in some games, it just does not much. You won't have a good time playing Invasion of Zendikar against aggressive decks. And if there is one thing that I learned from this data, is that despite what's being said about MUM, that it's a slower format, that you can do certain things, over time it became much faster, I think. And over time, the aggressive decks were people started to build them correctly, and because they started to build them correctly, they can go under decks that try to dirtle playing Invasion of Zendikar and then ramping into big things. You might not have enough time to do that. But because the card is also treated as basically a B plus level card by people in draft and picked accordingly, It's probably that's why it's overplayed, even though it's better than the other three on that slide in terms of win rate, but it's still overplayed. And the last one is Invasion of Ulgrotha. This one has the very similar problem to the Invasion of Lorwyn. It is 5 defense. It is a removal, not even an unconditional one. And really, are you going to move the screen now? Yes. Yes, that's my cat trying to completely ruin the stream. First fighting with the dog, now moving the computer like a crazy maniac. Yeah, go in the camera. Let people see your face. Sure. You had your food. You're not getting any more. Wow, this is going to be definitely class content in terms of me struggling with the animals yet again. So backside of it is better because it has evasion and it grows and it can be pretty scary. I had a couple of games when this thing got out of control. It negates some strategies, which is worth knowing. So I think Invasion of Ulgrotha is a great sideboard card against Rakdos Sack because it's hard to race with sacrificing your creature when this thing grows every time you do it. Okay, so now you want to be also in the camera. Yes, you are. But that doesn't mean that you can. Move on to your face. Yes. Cats have one thing, and that's relentlessness. But still, even at 5 mana, it's just not good enough most of the time. And again, it's being picked as a premium thing that you want to have in your deck at all times. Since when are you playful? You're old. You should be lying down and sleeping at this time. And we go here. Good. Thank you. I'll have to probably refeed him. Okay, so these 4 are the most overplayed, but which are the ones? No, it's gonna be impossible. Which ones? Which invasions are the most underplayed? Because probably that's where the equity is for you. Because of course, if you know what is overplayed, you can skip playing it. But it would be good to know which ones are underplayed compared to how their win rate is. And I think we have a set of 4 pretty interesting invasions. I don't have any experience with Invasion of Dominaria, so I can't be saying why this one is performing better than it's played. I think that people think that it's a do nothing card, but it actually can be a useful thing in some decks. I don't think that there's many decks that want to use it. I don't think that any aggressive deck wants to play it. But I think it's like a great splash card for a control deck that utilizes some white. Maybe you play Simic deck splashing Sunfall, and you might as well add Invasion of Dominaria to that kind of deck because it will be on plan with what you're trying to do, and that is surviving until you can cast Sunfall, for example. And it also digs you to it. So I think that there will be decks that the Invasion of Dominaria is going to be good. It has not amazing numbers, but decent enough, I think. It's something that, here the 5 toughness of the invasion is not a big issue because you're not planning on flipping it rapidly. You want to maybe do it somewhere by the way. Maybe you want to play some kind of a black-white attrition deck and you just have like render inerts that can quickly flip it, for example, something like that. Invasion of Kaladesh. Now that's an interesting one, and I think that bunch of content creators were quite high on that invasion, and the numbers seem to suggest that they are at least partially right. It's not played a lot, but when it's played, it has decent stats. And I think that you want to play some kind of a blue-red, obviously, deck and utilize the artifact synergies. They're not that many, but all the incubator tokens are artifacts. There is an excellent card that goes with Invasion of Kaladesh in the form of Marauding Dreadship that puts 2 artifacts on board. There is the Beat Stick, and Beat Stick makes treasures, so that can also make it grow quite rapidly. So If you have a deck that has, a couple of dread ships, maybe a beat stick, Invasion of Kaladesh is going to be really premium because that crew cost is small. That vehicle can get really big very quickly, and you're also probably not going to try to combo off rapid kills because you also want to do some convoking and stuff like that. So I would draw your attention to Invasion of Kaladesh and maybe start putting it in your red-white deck, red-blue decks. Invasion of Asgol, this card is really strong and underplayed. I think that, despite what the numbers suggest on the win rate of Rakdos is a pretty good archetype if you are able to find an open lane. I found it a couple of times. Ethan, if you want to see good examples of Rakdos, join Ethan's stream. I think he's forcing it basically blind. And big part of the success of Rakdos in his case was that all the multicolor spells in Rakdos are just basically custom made for you. You will get it. No other colors will steal it to splash it as a one-off. Because in Invasion of Asgol and Yuri and the Signpost Uncommon, all those cards they want to do sacrificing, and no other decks want to do that. So you're probably going to get all of them if you're the only drafter on the table, and you will have frequently a deck that has like two Invasions of Asgol, Yuri, and the I forgot the name, the Rakdos Signpost, or even more. And those can make for some really good shells, especially if you have like a couple of bombs to support them, so you have like the later game. Yes, you can use Invasion of Asgol also as a sacrifice outlet after Furnace Reigns, as Mercurial noticed, because it says target player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker and loses 1 life. Which makes me think, what happens when you play Invasion of Asgol and opponent in response plays the thing that gives them hexproof? Do you have to target yourself and sacrifice your own creature? Oh no, I don't want to see it ever. On I don't want this. I don't want to be in that scenario ever. Stormclaw Rager, thank you very much, Leaky Pillow. And Invasion of Asgol has really strong numbers. If you looked at the game and hand win rate, it was definitely in the top 10 of the best invasions. When you think about it, that it's only an uncommon, and except for Amonkhet, all of the cards that are higher than that are rares and mythics. It should tell you something about the power of that card. So that's how strong it is. 57.1% game and hand win rate, pretty decent. And then the last one is Invasion of Pyrulia. Another card I really like because of the cost. I do like that it's 2 mana. I can play it early, fix my draw, get my land, and then, yes, I'm not playing a 2-drop, but then I'm fixing myself for the later game quite efficiently. And it flips into a solid 4/4 that I flipped without a problem in my blue-green decks at some stage, giving you this extra creature. And also, it makes attacking pretty awkward because even if you didn't play a 2-drop, you play a 3-drop, and then can they commit with everything and leave the invasion unblocked? Very often not. And because very often they cannot, very often it will anyway stop some attacks despite not playing a 2-drop. So there is disadvantage on that. And I think, not only you draw a land most of the time, but also you scry 3, which is basically a drawing of a card. It has some vibe of, growth spiral into it, but growth spiral that can actually flip into a decent creature. Okay. So these are the most underplayed, and I would really recommend that you look at those cards next time you draft and maybe try to see if they can fit in your deck, because there is some power in them if you know how to utilize those battles efficiently. And here we come to the point, how to utilize those battles most efficiently. So we start with the best early battles. And what do I mean by early? I calculated the games in opening hand win rate and then games played win rate. So basically, if a card is good early, the opening hand win rate is much higher than the games played win rate. And the ones that are the best early battles, Tarkir, Gobakan, Ixalan, those three, all of them cost 2 mana. So that's like something that points you towards what is good early, and that's cheap battles, basically. And you also will see that Gobakan is white, Tarkir is red. These two colors are not exactly known for their control decks in this format, which means that they can be played in aggro decks quite easily. And I don't even think that they're good 2-drops. I just think that they are possibly pretty good turn 4-drops when you can play a 2-mana creature and the battle at the same time, and then force awkward situations for the opponent next turn. Then Ixalan also 2 mana, so it can be played on 2. It can fix your draws. It can get a good creature late in the game, so it's good at every stage of the game, but particularly good in the opening hand. Then Innistrad is a 4 mana battle that you basically kill something. And here, why is it good in the opening hand? It's probably because you can plan a situation when you flash it in end of turn, clear something, and then attack to it directly. And it's much easier to do that early because later the board is clogged. People are starting to get those board stalls. And then because of that, it will be harder to flip it. And then if you manage to flip it, of course, you get the two zombies instantly. So you basically get a 4/4 over 2 bodies and potential to get more bodies after that. And that will basically swing the game in your advantage, but quite dramatically. Then we have Asgol and Amonkhet, the two that are just genuinely good, but they're also good early, which is important to know. This has partly to do that, the difference between games in opening hand and games played is also at the difference between, in this game I actually drew that card, and the games played only in maybe 45% of the games I drew the card. So a bunch of those games will be without any impact of those battles. Then you have the battles of Mercadia, New Phyrexia, still good in the opening hand, but actually New Phyrexia is much better in the late game. It's still quite good in the opening hand, so that card is strong independently of what happens. Zendikar, this is another part of the Battle of Zendikar, the invasion of Zendikar, that makes it maybe overplayed, because people always imagine those great scenarios when you play it on turn 4, you ramp to 6, 7 next turn, and you play like some impressive creatures. But a lot of the games you will draw it later, and then it becomes much less impressive because the 4/4 becomes like meh. The ramp becomes less valuable because you're probably already on 6-7 lands. So why would you need the 2 other ones? But in the opening hand, the card is arguably really good. Battle of Segovia, obviously that's another early one when you can just play it for 3 mana and get 2 1/1s, and then also threaten flipping it, which in the decks that won Battle of Segovia, flipping it is a big boost because the serpent that you flip into basically untaps 4 creatures every turn, and since you will have possibly quite some few convoke spells, that basically gives you 4 mana every turn while keeping the blockers back. And then the Battle of Pyrulia. It's also good in the opening hand. We already talked about this one when I talked about the underdrafted or underplayed battles. And Battle of Fiora, even though it's very expensive, it's still good to have it in the opening hand so you can play out your game so that you either not invest too many creatures or maybe, try to go with the shenanigans when you play a couple of legendaries and then Fiora, because you can plan it around better. You still will have like a bonus from having it in the opening hand, but it's better also as a late battle. Talking about best late battles, here on top we have Battle of Arcavios. It's really strong compared to its games played win rate when you look at the games actually that's mistake on this is games not in the opening hand, but this is games drawn later in the game, but not in the opening hand. Minus games played win rate. It has a high number there, but that's mainly because the games played win rate is just so pathetically low that it is actually good when you draw it late, or not good. It is actually passable when you draw it late. The problem is that if you draw it early, it's atrocious. It's got an atrocious impact on your win rate because you basically mulliganed yourself, and because of that, that card is basically unplayable. Here we see the controlling invasions: New Phyrexia, Fiora, and Tulvada. These ones allow you to, if you survive till the stage when you have 7 mana, 8 mana, New Phyrexia will basically clog the board and probably win you the game. Battle of Fiora, well, if you draw it late, you can just basically wipe out the whole board and restart the game, which against aggressive strategies can be just basically the moment when you're starting to turn the corner. Battle of Tolvada, of course, it's better late because at the front side of that battle is reanimate a creature from your graveyard. And at the stage when you draw it late, you will have more things in your graveyard, so bigger selection of what you can reanimate, which is great. And also you can play like turns when you can flip it, and flipping this one gives you basically a hard to beat card that generates a 2/1 flying lifelinker every turn. So it's hard to win against that kind of value engine. And Amonkhet is still good late because very often you will actually snipe one card from their hand. Again, graveyards are going to be fuller, so you're going to get a bigger choice of what you want to have the thing come as a copy of. It's a natural 2/4/1, if not 3/4/1 in that stage, which is always good when you're playing this kind of deck that wants to lead to later games. Battle of Ikoria. This one, again, it grows with the game because the more lands you have, the more X you can pay for the front side. So if you have like 7 mana, you can bring a 5-drop on the battlefield from your deck. Non-human, worth noting. Bonders cannot be called by Ikoria. So it's pretty expected that this one will have games drawn quite higher than the games played win rate. Invasion of Karsus. This again lets you play around and make sure that you sculpt the board in such a way that it hits the opponent very hard and it hits you much less hard. Strangely, Invasion of Tarkir is also good and drawn in the late game. I guess the 2 damage to something is still strong enough, and then the threat of flipping the dragon is quite a big game changer. And we have also Battle of Alara, the 5-color one. It's, of course, you don't want to draw it too early because there is a very small chance that you're going to be able to cast it. Battle of Rin, the Sift one. Again, late in the game, Sift is going to be much better because if you have like 7 mana, you play this, you draw 3 cards, you discard something that you don't need, and you still can get a 3-drop to play, so you can double spell quite efficiently with it later in the game. And Asgul is still good in the late game, although it is better in the early game. It gives you a bigger advantage. So yeah, here we have like the best battles early in the game, the best battles later in the game. So the question is, how many battles should we play? And here I looked at all the decks in that data set and how many battles they played. And actually quite a large chunk. I remind you, I looked at 300,000 games. So 60,000 of those 300 games, so 20% had 0 battles in the deck. Then 90,000 game decks had 89,000 90,000 decks in the data set had 1 battle in them, so that's 30%. And then you go down. So basically, the majority of the plurality of decks have only 1 battle in them. Then there's like 77,000 with 2, so that's 25-ish%. And then you drop off to 45,000 decks will have 3 battles, so that's 15% of the decks. and you go to under 10% for 4 battles, that's 20,000 decks, and then just 7,000 with 5, and quite respectably, eight decks had well, not 8 decks, but 8 games that I've analyzed had 11 battles in them. So this totals battles, not unique battles. So I'm impressed that someone played a deck with 11 battles in them, and actually those 11 battles had pretty decent win rate. So maybe you can build a deck with 11 battles, and it's not going to be an 0-3 possibly. But more than 5 will happen very, very, very rarely. I could actually Mike the mic. Maybe in a bonus after I finish the seminar, maybe we can fish out this deck with 11 battles and then try to find the replays of those games. It's possible with 17 lands. Okay, but yeah, I mean, generally over 5 will happen very rarely. But that again tells us only about how people build the decks. I actually was pretty surprised that as much as 50% of the decks almost have 0 to 1 battles, and then the other 50% have more. That was a bit surprising to me. I was expecting more, because I know that there are 24 battles per pod, so 3 on average per player. That means that a bunch of battles don't see their play. It's interesting. So here is the win rate based on the number of battles in deck. I only took the higher numbers just not to get into the trap of analyzing something with very small sample size. But what you can see is that increasing the numbers of battle in the deck is continuously leading to the drop in the win rate. So if you have 0 battles in the deck, the average win rate was 56. 1 battle 55.5, 2 battles 54.5, 3 battles 54%, 4 battles 53%, then 5 battles 51%, and 6 battles 48.3. And then there's a slight increase in 7 battles at 49.5, but you have to keep in mind that 7 battles was only 700 games to analyze, so that's a small sample size. That there will be variance in there involved, much more likely than in those when you have like 90,000, 70,000. But general trend is the more battles you put in your deck, the less you win. And it's something that is not surprising to me, but it's something that is maybe a bit disappointing, because this format, the set was all about the battles, and they are the new mechanic, and it's a bit, disappointing to see that the more of them you put, the less you win. Mike, the mic. The last point, treat it with a bit of caution. I could put the one with 11 battles that had 58% win rate, and you would be devastated by that. But in general, this might be something that, like when you have fully dedicated battle deck, maybe there is something to be said. When you build it just to destroy battles, then the battles can be much better. Like you have a bunch of battles and 3 of them are regatha, for example, and you just like wreck the other ones with regatha, and you flip them, and life is good. Okay. This is, I think, the more interesting, because I thought, okay, so let's look at some other components of what happens when you are putting battles into your deck. And I decided, okay, one thing I want to look at is game length, and how does the inclusion of the battles impact the game duration. And here we have 2 aspects: the duration of games that the 17 lens user won, and the duration of the games that the 17 lens users lost, as a function of how many battles you put in the deck. And first thing, lost games. You see that the fewer battles you put in your deck, the longer the game will last, even if you lose it. So that means that these are possibly more competitive games when you're not being overrun. But with each battle you put, the duration of your lost game is decreasing, which means that battles are basically bad if you are having a game when you're having any kind of trouble. Because obviously those cards will not bring you back most of the time to the game. So with each addition of the battle, the games you lose are going to last a bit less. And you start like 9.5 turns when you have no battles, and you go down to 8.9 turns when you have 7 battles. And it is basically linear and quite stable in terms of how it drops. So this is something that will make me very wary to overload on the battles in general. But there can be alternative explanation why this trend is happening. And one explanation is that not every deck wants battles, and we're going to look in a second which kinds of decks want battles and which kind of decks don't want battles when we look at the specific data for color combination. But yeah, the disappointing part of it is that yes, putting battles in your deck will make you lose games faster, and that's bad for particular style of the decks. And that means that, for example, if you're playing like a deck that wants to go longer, you probably should play few battles. In terms of won games, the games you win in the decks that have no battles last around 9 turns, maybe 9.05 turns. And then it sort of increases 9.2 for 1 battle, 9.25 for 2 battles, 9.3 for 3 battles. So the games it takes you longer to win when you have battles. And that's not necessarily bad. But in general, it is something that you should look into it. That also, if you play 3 battles, you probably want to play a deck that wants to play a longer game. So you don't want to play cards that are good for like decks that want to kill very fast. And this is again suggesting that you want to put battles in moderate amount in your control decks, and you probably want to skip battles almost altogether in the decks that are strictly aggro. And yeah, we're going to look at it a bit later. Then actually there is like a slight flattening, but I wouldn't call it a drop off. I would say that just it stays at this level between 9.2 and 9.3 turns as you increase the number of the battles. So like adding extra battles is not going to make you win longer. It probably will have very little impact on the game duration. But it is true that putting many battles in your deck will make you lose some games very quickly. And I'm pretty sure that it's going to be that you're going to do all right in some games, but in the games when you draw like 3 battles, you're going to just get overrun very quickly, and there's nothing you're going to do, and that game is going to end quicker. Therefore, the game duration will be decreased. The average game duration will be decreased by those type of games. It's something like maybe making irresponsible splashes. I would compare it to that, when sometimes that splash is going to win you the game, but quite frequently it's also going to make you not draw your main lands of your main color, and because of that not being able to cast spells, and because of that losing the game. Here it's going to be slightly different. You're not going to be losing the game because you didn't cast the spells, but because the spells you cast did not affect the board sufficiently. And battles very frequently don't impact the board sufficiently. And I think that the lesson from Corticals is a good one from one of his episodes, when he said you have to make sure in this format that you're staying with your opponent, and putting too many battles in your deck will not let you stay with your opponent, because they will be playing creature, and you'll be playing creature, battle, and then what? They probably have overrun you already, and still are capable of leaving blockers behind to protect the battle, so you'll never be able to flip them. So I think that this is the graph table of this seminar. So let's spend some time on that. Here we have color pairs, and here we have number of battles in the deck. I only looked at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 because these have the highest sample sizes, and because of that I could get some kind of a reliable value of the win rate for each of them. And inside of the table obviously are the win rates. And here we can look at blue-white, 0 battles, 59.7% win rate. 1 battle, 58.4% win rate. 2 battles, 57 win rate. 3, 56.45, and 4 battles, 52.4. You can see that there is a very strong linear drop of win rate in blue-white, specifically when you put with every battle extra that you put in your deck. And white-black, it's basically as low win rate across the board, but still 0 battles, 52.5, and then it drops to 50% when you have 3 or 4 battles. So it also has that dropping trajectory. Another white archetype, white-red, 56.5 win rate when you have 0 battles, drops to 55.5, 53.5, 51.5, and 50.5. So again, stable drop-off as you increase the number of the battles. And white-green, last of the white archetypes, starts at 57.8 when you have no battles. So this is one of the stronger lessons from this. When you play white-green, don't put any battles in it. And then drops to 55.8, 53.7, 54.2, 51.5 as you put 4 battles. So all the white colors, with every battle that you put in, they decrease their win rate. And that's something really to keep in mind. And I would say that for me, this is a signal. If I play white in my deck, I want to have between 0 and 1 battles, with probably most of the time I probably want to have 0 battles. In the most common decks, I assume that there will be sub builds of white decks that are doing fine with a lot of battles, but they are going to be rare, and they will be very specific decks, and you should be able to identify those kind of decks and figure out what you want to do with them and how you want to play them. But they are not going to be the bulk. This data is based on the bulk, and in most cases white blue, white black, or white blue, white red, and white green, because these are actually the playable archetypes. They want to be on the more aggressive side, and because they want to be on the more aggressive side, they will rarely want battles. They will maybe want one specific one that fits with the plan. If you play white red, you probably put Invasion of Tarkir in your deck anyway, because it does what you want. Or maybe you want to put like Invasion of Regatta for extra reach. I don't know. And I think that the important part is that if you play those white decks, and if you play invasions in those, you want to play invasions for their front side, and you probably don't have enough power to play an invasion and try to flip it and then win the game. So you probably want to play them but not flip them. So you want to play them only for the face value. And that will be my guess. And then you want to have no more than one of those. Then we look at the blue-black, and the picture is very different. Like 0 battle blue-black decks, 56% win rate. 1 battle, 57. 2 battles, 57. 3 battles, 58. And then it drops at 4 to 56.5, which is still reasonable. So you can see that in terms of blue-black, the win rate independent of the number of battles that you have in your deck is relatively flat. Now, this is going to be very much boosted by the fact that the most played battle invasion in blue-black is going to be the invasion of Amonkhet. So yes, if you have like a couple of invasions of Amonkhet, you will not going to be sad at all. Even if you have 3, you're going to be probably quite happy. So it's worth noting that this is very much inflated by invasion of Amonkhet being the most played invasion, and then it bumping the whole archetype. But because of that, you just know also that you can play any number of invasions of Amonkhet and it's fine. Blue-red, also pretty flat, 54 with 0 battles, 56 with 1 battle. Then it goes back to 54 with 2, 52, 53 with 3, and around 53.5 with 4. So also slightly flat, but there is a slight bump with having 1 battle. So, maybe don't exaggerate, don't go all in on the battles in this archetype. but it's fine to play them in there, and fine to play multiple copies. It shouldn't be detrimental to your win rate. Blue-green is basically flat: 55.9, 55.4, 55.6, 55.7, 55.1 at all the numbers of the battle of the invasions that you're playing in those. So blue-green doesn't seem to care how many invasions it plays, and I think that because it counts splashes in this statistic, it counts all the splashed invasions that you put into your blue-green deck as well. But good news for you if you're playing blue-green and you want to play battles. That's probably one of those archetypes when you don't mind playing more. A very interesting piece of data for me is black-red, which actually has the lowest win rate when it has 0 invasion at 51.8. So if you play black-red and you have 0 invasions, you have the lowest win rate. And here, I think that at least part of that result is due to the fact that if you play black-red and Invasion of Asgul didn't wheel, and you probably got an Invasion of Asgul on your pod, then you're probably shouldn't be drafting black-red. And then it increases to 53 at 1 invasion, 53.5 at 1 invasion, 53.5 on 2 invasions, 54 at 3, and 55 with 4 invasions. So black-red, it seems, the more invasions, the merrier. I assume that you also want to pick the good ones. So the Invasion of Asgul, maybe Invasion of Mercadia, maybe Invasion of Eldraine, all those kind of things will fit quite nicely into that deck. Because it's pretty much small ball deck in terms of it doesn't have big chunky creatures. Maybe you will have a couple of bombs, but because of that, I think accruing this slight value by playing battles is something that you want to be in, might be interested in black red specifically. Then black green is very similar to Simic. 55.6, 55.2, 54.7, 54.8, 55.7, respectively from 0 to 4. So again, flat level, you want to put, you don't mind how many invasions you put in your black-green deck. It seems all is fine in your average black-green deck. I mean, obviously, you have to think about whether your specific deck can accommodate multiple invasion, but at least it seems to me that the black-green can accommodate multiple invasions without bigger problems. And then red-green, the Battle Buster deck, it seemed. And indeed, this is another one apart from the black-red where having 0 invasion is the lowest win rate, 52.8. And then having 1 is 55.2. And then it drops to 54, 53.5, and 55 at 4. So at least there is traces of signs that you can play multiple invasions in this red-green in this sort of battle defeating focused version of the deck. But there doesn't seem to be a massive benefit from putting multiple battles in those red-green decks. So yeah, there we go. This is the money table of this seminar, looking at color-specific win rates depending on how many battles are there in your deck. And I think that, looking at this data, you can learn quite a lot about the format. And then I thought, okay, but does it tell me anything about the speed of those decks? And I decided to make the different analysis. I looked at the win rate on each of those colors depending on when the game was ended, and all the results that I found that the sample size was big enough. I put in this table, I colored it so that you can see red being, of course, high win rates, blue being low win rates, because maybe the numbers are quite small when you look at them. But I think, again, the most interesting thing that I find in this graph is the difference between white-blue and blue-black decks in this format. So when you look at the white-blue, games that end turn 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, over 60% win rate. So white-blue wants to win those early games. It's really strong in getting those early wins on the table. And then the longer the game lasts, the smaller the chance for you of winning. So on turn 9, it already drops from 62% to 56%. On turn 10, the games that ended on turn 10 the white-blue players only won 52% of their games. In turn 11 to 15, it drops to like 47, 40, 45% basically. So if you're playing blue-white canonical builds, because again we're operating on large data sets, most decks are going to be the decks that are most canonical for the archetype. I'm pretty sure that you will find some blue-white decks that can play the longer game, but most canonical decks, they want to really win by turn 8, and then it becomes an uphill struggle when you go past the turn 8. You will frequently not have tools to win. But it's a completely polar opposite for the blue-black decks. When games that end on turn 5, 6, 7 are around between 48 and 51% win rate, which is not spectacular when you think that this is allegedly the best archetype in the format. Then it goes up to 56% at turn 8, 58 at turn 9, 59 at turn 10, 61.5, 60, 60, 60, 58, 58 at turns 11 to 16. So blue-black does polar opposite of the blue-white, and it doesn't win the games that end early. It doesn't have the tools to probably end the game sufficiently early, but it has really, really big advantage when the operator of the Dimir deck manages to draw the game into the late game. Now, all the white decks. Well, let's not look at the white-black. It just seems to be relatively bad across the board. But white-red and white-green, they all have the same trend as the white-blue. So white-green wins 68% of the games that end on turn 5 that it is involved in. White-red wins 68% of the games that end on turn 5 that it's involved in. And they have the over 60% win rate until turn 7. And then it drops off and quite dramatically. So, for example, white-green wins on 55% of the games that end on turn 8 still, and then goes to 52, 49, 50, 41, 43. So, basically, those decks don't win much when the game lasts over 10 turns. Same with white-red. 54 at turn 8, 50 at turn 9, 45 at turn 10, 42 at turn 11, 42 at turn 12. So again, it's a very steep drop off if you cannot close the game before turn 10. To some extent, blue-red has the same thing. The colors just mean the colors just mean win rate if the game ends at this particular turn. So, for example, here, dark red, it means that white-blue decks win a lot of games that end on turn 6. And this is just basically to show that some decks, if the game lasts longer, they will have struggle winning. And some decks like blue-black, if the game lasts longer, they have a much bigger chance of winning. Actually, blue-black is the only deck that can win those late games. That's possibly the secret of its dominance. It can prolong the game, and then when the game lasts longer, they will most likely win. I mean, most likely 60%. That's still quite a lot. So blue-red and red-green also have the similar trend. They will win the games quite happily until turn 8, and then after turn 8, they start deteriorating, but not as much as the white decks. It goes down to 48, 47% win rate as the game lasts over 10 turns, but it doesn't drop to 41, 43 like white-red and white-green. So you have to also keep that in mind, that probably your good white-red deck will really want to kill by turn 8, and you want to make sure that you build it in a way that allows that to happen. There's a couple of mid-range decks, and to surprise of no one really, classic example is Golgari. Golgari yet again managed to be in this strict mid-range spot. It doesn't really win much in the early games. It still has over 50% win rate if the game ends early, so 55, 53%. Then it has a good streak of if the games last 8, 9, or 10 turns, it has the win rate of roughly 56, 57, 55%. Still at turn 12, 56%, that's fine. And then it starts dropping off. So it doesn't have this capacity of making sure that they're unassailable at late game that blue black has, for example. It might be something to do with the fact that blue black can protect its life total very efficiently. So if the game lasts longer, even if there is a slight wobble, they will be able to survive. While green black maybe does not have that capacity, and if there is a slight wobble, they will lose that game. And wobbles do happen frequently, actually. So yeah, blue red and red green, they are similar, as I already mentioned, to the white decks. Black red. This deck has relatively similar numbers across board. However, it does show that it's slightly better in the beginning of the game. But again, it has a pretty low win rate in the data, in my opinion, because of people slightly misplaying it. All right. That's it, I think, for today. Hopefully, this has shed some of the light of the battles. I tried to squeeze out as much data as I could on from what is available. And I think that it is interesting to look at the battles from the perspective of what are the plans for particular color combinations to win. So yeah, with that, I would like to acknowledge 17 lands and the team, especially Ale Ballini, who is doing really Lord's work for getting the data out. And of course, Viral Misnomer, who is, always coming up with the new ideas. Currently, it's a small spoiler, but hopefully interesting to the people in here. We're basically trying to incorporate Archetypist into the 17 lands, and hopefully soon it's going to be a feature that you can use and that we will be able to expand on. Also, thanks to Fake Jake Brown, who, as always, is going to help me with putting it in the podcast format. And if we are on the podcast format, I would like to thank Esescu and Mana Junkie for the music that we're using as the intro. And obviously, thanks to the patrons. Unfortunately, this week, no new patrons to report, but thanks to all the patrons for their support. And thanks to MTGA Zone for sponsoring me. And with that, I'll see you next week.